So, so thank you again for being here. And our topic today is the kindness response. So, I often start with a question. So, how many of you is part of your day, is part of your experience of your day, going on to cable news or onto social media? I see some hands. Some point during your day, social media, cable news. Okay. So after doing this, and I know you can't respond, but how does it make you feel? Does it make you stressed? Do you feel a little stressed or triggered after you go onto cable news or social media? Well, for me, much of the time when I do these things, I feel triggered. I feel like I can't breathe as deeply as I usually can. I feel a wave of anxiety in my chest. The constant flow of breaking news every half hour or so just makes me reactive. I remember when I was young and breaking news, when that stream went across this monitor or across our black and white TV or color TV in those days. You knew it was something to panic about. There was an assassination, something really, really, really serious happened, and it was time to alarm the population. But now we have that feeling time after time, multiple times through the day. It's pretty rare that there's not some kind of breaking news going on. Now, I'm not saying there isn't something to be concerned about out there every day, because, gosh, we all know how difficult these times are and how much there is to be triggered about. But there is an intentional quality of how we are triggered in these times. Media is aware that there is, I see a thumbs up. Media is aware that if you're frightened enough, you will tune back in or pay attention very, very quickly and over. And that's how people have supply their advertisers revenue, and we all know how it works. But whether it's Facebook, cable news, or conservative or liberal, we could feel the triggering, and we could feel it inside us. At least I could say I can. Now, of course, if I put on conservative news, I can only last about 15 to 20 seconds because I stop breathing altogether. And they don't even need the breaking news banner to go across the bottom for me to panic. So we talked about reacting and responding last week. And this week we're going to go a little deeper into a related topic. We talked about how the reptilian brain works. And we could see society has tapped in on that reptilian brain. And it's aware that the fight, flight, or freeze reaction will get our attention. We are wired to react. It kept our ancestors alive. We're often not conscious when we are reacting from that lineage, which is in our DNA. But there's also another quality to being human that is in our DNA. That's also an essential essence of being human. And that is the part of us that wants to help each other. That part of us that knows empathy. The part of us that pulls us towards responding with collaboration and kindness, or just wants to help. And this may not come to mind these days so quickly because we're so often exposed to negative and triggering media that sometimes we will forget that kindness and empathy is and are a significant part of who each of us are. If you think about it, why did human beings survive? Why are we on the top of the food chain? It's not because we have long, sharp teeth or huge muscles. We can't run faster, and we're not fiercer hunters, and I guess in a sense we've become that, but it's because the true reason for the success of humanity is because we collaborate. It's because we've learned to work together. We've learned to help each other. And it's only our ability to collaborate that has helped us develop societies. It's not our separation that makes us great. What makes the human condition as powerful as it is our empathy. It's in our DNA to care for each other. So the reason, the reason I'm discussing empathy, collaboration, and kindness this week is due to an extraordinary film that I had watched 2 weeks ago. And it's by Ron Howard, and he does fabulous films, always touching. And the name of the film is 13 Lives. Has anyone watched this film recently? All right. Okay, Elizabeth, awesome. Well, I couldn't stop thinking about it. It's available on Netflix and I believe Amazon Prime. It's the true story of 12 Thai boys and their coach who ventured into a tourist cave in Thailand and were missing and lost for an extended amount of time. We all probably remember this story. It happened in 2018. No one knew if they were dead or alive. Well, I'd like to talk a little bit about the story, share the story through my perspective, through what I've heard, and just feedback about it. There was a Thai soccer team, I'm going to refresh everybody's minds on the story, called the Wild Boars. And after a practice one day, they thought it would be fun to have a short adventure into the Tonglang caves. And off the boys went into the cave. They went very deep in. And what happened was something they did not expect. It was June. It was not the season for monsoons. And a monsoon hit. And I believe monsoons come on very, very quickly. And the water fell upon the mountain that these caves are in. It started filling in through the entrances and through cracks all throughout the mountains and waterways. And the boys became trapped. The families were waiting for them to arrive at the party, and somehow, of course, they did not arrive, and a frantic search ensued. And this started in the community and slowly reached into the day after day, reached into the province and reached out through Thailand day after day with no success. The head minister of Thailand called in all their engineers, their Navy divers, all the experts they could possibly find to try to help them or rescue them or see even find them. And the news media at that time around the globe began to report this. Countries all over the world any country that had media became aware of what was happening, and the world basically stopped what it was doing and and just paid attention everywhere, everywhere on the planet. All that made humanity separate, all that quality of me and you and us and them just stopped for a little while. And our attention went to these boys. If they were alive, if there's a chance. Diving experts, Navy SEALs from all over the world arrived to offer their help. Elon Musk sent his top tech people to assist. Experts in cave rescue arrived, a certain group that were some of the top in the world. They arrived from the UK, 2 specific divers. And they asked for permission to go into the cave, but the Thai officials were very slow to allow them to enter. And eventually they allowed them in. And these were the best in the world. It took them multiple attempts to get deeply into the caves. And finally, after several days, I think 8 or 10 days, they managed to find their way 2.5 miles into the depths of the cave to find the boys and their coach in a small section that had not been fully flooded, and they were alive. Yes, it was 8 days. They had barely anything to eat, just some snacks they had with them. The boys' families were overjoyed to hear they were all alive, but the divers were not that happy, for to them there was no conceivable way to get the boys out. The only way would be to transport the boys underwater through the caves, which would take about 6 to 7 hours. A journey that was nearly impossible for even the most experienced of divers. And the boys were weak from not eating. Most didn't even know how to swim, and swimming ultimately was not, even if they put them in diving suits, was not an option. They would have panicked and they would have drowned. Everyone was hopeless, and they waited and hoped for the rains to slow down and to develop a plan. With those boys was that coach I mentioned, and their coach was orphaned as a child, and both of his parents died, and he was placed in a Buddhist monastery to be raised. So he was raised in their practice and became a monk. And as he grew older, he eventually had to leave the monastery to care for an ailing grandparent. He gave, and when this happened and they were trapped in that cave, he had food. He gave absolutely everything to the boys. He did not take a morsel. And during that time, he taught the boys to meditate. And in that practice, he helped the boys to thrive and survive mentally and emotionally. The boys practiced mindfulness and meditation. And the monk somehow experienced his destiny, and it was to help them. He was terribly upset and he felt responsible for the boys being trapped. But his mindfulness helped the boys stay centered and strong and kept them well enough when most people would have become completely shattered. The monsoons did not let up, and the cracks were filling with water. And the engineers and townspeople decided to create an effort to deter the water from the mountains, away from the caves. But if they were to do this, the water had to go somewhere. And the only place it would have had to go is the rice fields that surrounded the mountains, that were owned by very poor Thai people. And they had to ask these poor farmers permission to flood their fields, destroy their crops and their fields. And they did. And every one of them said yes. And even though none of them were related to the boys. And in turn, all these people lost everything. Around the world, around the globe, people prayed and they meditated that the monsoons would stop. And strangely, and for some people that in their belief system, maybe not so strangely, the rain did stop. And it stopped for several days. And somehow, it lowered enough that they would hope that maybe they could come up with something. And just around that time, an expert diver from Australia was called in. His name is Richard Harris. And aside from being a diver, he was a physician and an anesthesiologist. And his idea was to sedate all the boys, which I don't think was media broadcasted at that time, to actually knock the boys out cold so that the divers could pull them like a package through the water from one end for 2.5 miles underwater, 6 to 7 hours, so that they could get them out. Now, they felt that doing this, they might get a couple out alive, and their sense was most would not even make it. But it was the only thing they could do, and they did not let anybody know what they were doing. It, of course, was approved through the officials in Thailand. And they had to sedate the boys every hour or so underwater, repeatedly, to keep them sedated. Like an absolutely impossible task and journey. So they began. And they brought one boy through, and he survived. Then they brought another boy through, and he survived. And by the end of that first day, they had brought 4 boys through, and they all survived. Everybody was shocked and overjoyed. And then, slowly, over the next course of several days, they brought through every one of the boys, as you probably remember, and everyone survived, along with the coach. Extraordinary. An estimated 10,000 people contributed to the rescue effort, including more than 100 divers, representatives from 100 countries, 900 police, 2,000 soldiers, and numerous volunteers. Equipment included helicopters, ambulances, 700 diving cylinders that were constantly filled and dropped in along the path through these waters. More than 1 billion liters of water was removed from the caves and diverted away. Unbelievable. One of the SEALs, a Navy SEAL, a high-ranking Navy SEAL, died during the operation. That's one of the reasons that, if Navy SEALs were diving or did not survive this trip, how could these boys make it? Right? Another diver also died due to blood infection a year later that he acquired from the waters. In this event, humanity witnessed and participated in active loving kindness. It was active loving kindness in its truest form, and it reminded us of the essence of who we are. The Course in Miracles teaches that the opposite of love is not hate. It's fear. And I think when we have a moment of fear, our invitation is to pause and ask, what would kindness or love do? We at UUCP are a voice of kindness in the world. And I And Lakeland UU recognize you as well. And I think we live in a time where we need to remember just this, that the essence of kindness and compassion is who we are. It is the part of what brings people into a congregation like ours. We're not here because of an ideology or a faith, a specific one. We're here because our hearts long for justice for all. And in this sense, I think that might be the greatest form of kindness, really. That desire to ensure that others may have the well-being we have, that others may have the opportunities we have, that others may have the privileges we have, that others may have the freedom that we have. Today's service is an invitation to consciously bring loving kindness into our lives and into the lives we touch. And through that, remember who we are. Let me repeat that invitation to consciously bring loving kindness into our lives, into the lives we touch, and through that to remember who we are. Because sometimes we forget who we are. Sometimes we forget these essences that are part of our nature, our true nature. So I'm going to close with an Ojibwe prayer. Grandfather, look at our brokenness. We know that in all creation, only the human family has strayed from the secret way. We know that we are the ones who are divided. And we are the ones who must come back together to walk the sacred way. Grandfather, Sacred One, teach us love, compassion, and honor. And may we heal the earth and heal each other. May it be so. If you like this video, please like us on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and click on the bell to be notified whenever we post a new video. Thank you.